Hey, Focus fam, it's Focus Chan. Happy Wednesday. Hope you guys are having a wonderful start to the week. Happy hump day. A little bit of a chop fest, but I like how the market is setting up to potentially end the week strong. So let's dig into it, guys. I'm going to share a few thoughts on the market, share a few setups. Let's dig right in. One big thing to focus on for tomorrow, so leading into Thursday and Friday, the market truly looks like it's waiting on something. We started the week, ended the week, excuse me, really, really strong here in ES, pushing up to some big key levels that we'll break down in a minute. But we truly have gone sideways, this entire week. Monday, Chop Fest, Tuesday, Chop Fest, and we just wrapped up Wednesday session with pretty much a Chop Fest, getting nowhere. So if we take a look at the economic calendar, one big thing I like to pay attention to is the core CPI numbers that we're going to get tomorrow, an hour before the bell. So this week, it's really been a pretty quiet week for the overall market. Last week we had our job reports that kind of, moved the market up into this range. If we take a look, this was that Friday job report, the NFP exploded. So 9 out of 10 times, guys, if the market is going sideways, sometimes it means it's waiting on something, and it could be economic data. So tomorrow morning at 8:30 Eastern time, an hour before the bell, we're going to get our core CPI numbers, and this is a nice little glimpse into the market. We're going to see how they react. So really, guys, this is the one thing that I'm hoping can change the market for the rest of the week, leading into Thursday and Friday. So let's talk about it. Obviously, no sense talking about the numbers. We're going to know about that well before the bell rings. It's just a matter of being prepared for the potential catalyst that could move the overall. So if we take a look here real quick on a daily chart, not much to look at other than what's in front of us. So if we just look back and look left, we truly have gone nowhere. We're completely sideways, just lingering right at that all-time high. We chopped, we tried to go, and then boom, we got rejected. We fought all the way back, and now we're just seeing what we saw right here, where we truly just linger near all-time high. So at this point, guys, we got to be very careful. One of two things can happen. I guess one of three things. First thing is we can continue to chop. Market can chop longer than we can tolerate it. So be mindful that maybe we just chop for a while. And if that happens, we truly want to stay out of trouble and be really, really picky on when we decide to attack this market. One big thing to focus on as we wrap up the quarter here, so the end of June, is we're going to start to get in towards quad witching, which 9 out of 10 times generally leads to sideways action, a chop fest, and pinning. So right now we're kind of seeing that effect where last week we just pinned 4,200. This week we're pinning this 4,226, which are actually point of control levels. So for the overall market here, again, we can either just continue to chop or we can break out, or we're eventually going to get exhausted and a little bit afraid and roll back over. So if we take a look at a few squeezes that are starting to develop, the first is this 4-hour squeeze on ES. I think this is a really beautiful compass that hopefully can lead to the next good move. If we take a look, we haven't had the cleanest 4-hour squeeze in a while. So this is going to be one of our first and hopefully tighter looking squeezes. For Wednesday's session, finally started that orange dot squeeze with the Squeeze Pro, looking nice and tight. So this is one big compass that I'm going to continue to focus on for the rest of the week. Do we squeeze on point of control, which is this 4226, and do we finally get that explosion higher? If and when the market's ready, we have about a 42-point ATR. So at any given time, we can blow through that level and see a really good significant move. It's just a matter of if and when we can actually get through there, and can bulls step up and prove themselves. Currently and recently, bulls have by far proved themselves. Anytime we dip, we get bought right back up. However, bears aren't going anywhere. We can't get through them. So it's just a classic little battle here. So the 4-hour squeeze, really, really nice. Take a look at the 2-hour squeeze, also pretty nice. So gonna focus on the 4-hour. The bigger, the better. Usually if we have a 4-hour, we have a 2-hour, a 1-hour, a 30, et cetera, et cetera. So always like to focus on that bigger picture squeeze. And right now that is the 4-hour. So a few compasses, guys. Again, one is breaking that all-time high. That's a really big key level to focus on. And then finally, let's take a look at point of control. I like to measure point of control and where it steps up to. And what I mean by that is all of last week, point of control remained at 4,200 for the overall market. And we pretty much just, drop to it, we pop off it, we come right back, we go too far, we push right back. Kind of that magnet cannon effect you might have heard me mention in the past. If we take a look here, we got a beautiful step up for ES, right to that point of control. So if it can just continue to chop in here and then explode, we have good liquidity. Vice versa, if we do end up releasing those squeezes to the downside, 4,200 is personally my first target. And then the final thing I want to focus on is the daily mean, aka the 21 EMA for the overall market here. And that's right below, this 4,200, that 4188. So if we continue to hold this 4217, looking for that upside, as long as we squeeze, be patient. If we drop, we're headed right back down to liquidity, one step at a time. If we hop in here, look at NQ. I want to focus on them as well. They're really sloppy here, but they are forming a few squeezes. So if we take a look, much like ES, they're starting to give us that 4-hour squeeze. So just pay attention to this one. Overall, NQ needs to break this 13,947.5 to get towards all-time high. And if it can do that, this 4-hour squeeze should lead the way. Vice versa, it's going to be back into this chop fest. So the extra level to focus on is that point of control, which we had a really good retest on Tuesday? Nice little pop. Maybe we drift down tomorrow. That point of control is going to be my first target, and then we see. So overall, guys, the market is just truly sideways. We need to be extremely patient, see if we can find some catalysts such as economic data and the core CPI numbers to move this thing one way or another. That's truly, the name of the game right now. So let's hop into a few good setups here. And mainly, team, as you might imagine, a lot of the setups on my radar are squeezes. Overall market squeezing, and that's causing, if you look at my squeeze watch list here, a lot of names to squeeze. So squeezes cause a little bit of patience, but they lead to our next really big move. So gonna lay out a few setups here that might not happen this week, but as long as they're in those squeezes, are looking really good. And one of them is NVIDIA. So if you take a look at NVIDIA, they've had an extremely strong push here. They announced the stock split, they rallied into earnings, and they're up about 170 points here off of the recent lows in just about 20 days. Pretty crazy. So if we take a look, anytime that this name takes a break, just like here, it's a good time to look for another leg higher. So after its next and final leg, it's taking a break. Exactly what we need. Breaks lead to squeezes. So if we take a look, we have a nice 2-hour squeeze here on NVIDIA forming. We still have some bearish momentum that we need to shake, but as long as NVIDIA can hold this 690 key level, that prior all-time high that we broke on Friday, I'm still very bullish on this name. It's a little technically extended, but it has a catalyst with the stock split coming. So I really like the accumulation continuing into NVIDIA. So for now, I really just want to focus on this 2-hour squeeze. If we take a look, we do have a 4-hour slowly but surely forming here. I like to keep after hours on, and we're getting a little black dot here. So personally, going to continue to focus on the 2-hour, but it's really all about the levels at the end of the day. So as long as NVIDIA holds 690, which every time it hits it's a really good dip buy. Once it breaks out back through this 706, which is the high we create on Friday, where we rip through it, we drop back to 690, back up to 706 and fail. 706, we fail, 690, couldn't quite get that 706, 690 again. So we're playing ping pong. So much like the overall market, be patient. But if this name can get some wind behind it, market supportive, I really like another move on NVIDIA. With everything going on with the stock split, really not interested in shorting it. I just think it's going to go sideways rather than, sell off. One day at a time, but really, really like the squeezes here on NVIDIA. So for tomorrow, ATR on NVIDIA, about 20 bucks, 21 bucks. It can make its way higher towards 716. So I'd focus on strikes anywhere in that vicinity. Moving on here, guys, to Google. So if you take a look at Google, something interesting that happened today, especially towards end of day, Google showed a lot of really good relative strength, especially end of day here. You're getting some really good volume, while NQ was pretty much just bleeding into close. Google held up the entire time and even started to pop. So this is one that I really want to pay attention to for technology, where if technology does rally tomorrow, whether it's into CPI or just in general, would love to see this Google pop. And we have a squeeze. So if we take a look right now, we've kind of been drifting up here this week, and we're finally taking time to get some squeezes and some consolidation on Google. And again, I always use squeezes, guys, with after hours on. So take the consolidation for what it's worth. For me, it usually works with after hours on, just to get a sense of when it gets a little bit tighter. So for Google here, a few messy levels, but really the only levels that matter are breaking through this 2420 and this 2415, and then going to test all-time high, that 2431, if you just take a peek here at the daily chart. So Google truly is just winding up under that all-time high. One of the strongest names in technology. If it can just get through there, get a supportive market, I love this Google squeeze. So right now we have a 2-hour, also have an hourly, getting nice and tight. And that's pretty much all you need. Again, the best key level is this 2415, 2420. ATR about 40 bucks, call it. All-time high is about 25 bucks away. So I really like the Google 2430s for tomorrow, and the 2450s are also a good strike because that would kind of fit the ATR. So anything pushing towards that 2430 would make me a happy man. Great looking squeeze, relatively good, strength compared to anything else in tech. If tech's going to go, I think Google's the one. Doesn't mean tech's going to go, but if it does, this is one we want to keep an eye on. And moving on, guys, to Roku. So Roku, a bit sloppy, but really just hunting the best looking squeezes. So Roku's slowly but surely forming an hourly squeeze here. All I want to focus on is Roku breaking through 346 and 350 and working the way up towards 355 and 357. But take a look at ATR, about 15 points. Roku has a chance up towards that 355 at any time this week, if it can stay tight in a squeeze and if it can start to fire. If we take a look here, we got the daily mean right below on Roku, right at this 336. We kind of reverted to it on Tuesday and then popped nicely. So as long as Roku kind of bases here, not really interested in shorting it. That's why just kind of let it squeeze, let it kind of figure itself out, see if it can get tighter here on the hourly, maybe even give you a 2-hour squeeze. But when it breaks through this 350, I love a shot up towards 357. And then from there, we have a whole another trade. But just some squeezes to keep an eye on, team. Not really an A+ setup, but it is a squeeze that I wanted to cover. And the next squeeze here is Square, which is getting a little bit interesting. This is one that by far hasn't really shown much strength as of recent. If we just look at a daily chart, they really have been stuck at this 200-day moving average, which currently sits around 209. Kind of slipped through it the last time it got near it, and then finally rallied. Almost got back to the 50, which is the purple, and then right back down to the 200. So this is one I definitely want to pay attention to. Not really leaning super bearish on it, because anytime we're near the 200, unless the market is dumping, usually it's a good dip buy for, the average name. So if we just take a look here, right now it's not looking that good, but this 4-hour squeeze is really tight, but it looks like it's going to actually fire to the downside. So we could pay attention to this 209. And again, personally, I don't like shorting it to this range as it's fairly messy. But if it can hold this 209, stay in this 4-hour squeeze, if it could break through 220, I love a shot up towards 230. But it's really going to depend if it can hold the 200 here. And if it does break that 200 with strength, this 4-hour can easily release, leading to a pretty nice drop of about 10 points given its ATR. So kind of back down towards 200, which again gets you back into this messy consolidation. So really this 209-ish range, big little test. It's where Square broke out of last week, ran up to that key zone, and then they're pulling back here and basing. So really nice squeeze. Pay attention to that 200 and see what happens here. Do we fire to the downside? Do we turn around and eventually explode later in the week, or maybe even next week? Keep an eye on this one. And the final setup, guys, I would keep an eye on is Amazon. Not the easiest name to play, but what I do like is how it's setting up here. We have a really, really nice daily squeeze. This is by far one of the weakest names in technology. You look at something like Google, that's sitting near all-time high. Something like a Facebook, that's sitting near all-time high. And then look at something like an Apple, who's doing the exact same pattern as Amazon, where they're kind of, double bottoming here at the 200 MA. If I pull that up, a blue line, and giving you a daily squeeze. Amazon's doing the exact same thing. So I want to pay attention here if Amazon and Apple potentially move together, or if we just see Amazon start to catch up here. Or again, does Google continue to lead the way? So if we take a look again at that daily squeeze, looking pretty decent here. We put in our first higher low earlier in the week, and that caused a really nice rally. So up about 3 days straight here heading into Thursday. A really big key level I want to be wary of is this 33.12. Ideally, I'd actually like to see Amazon go a little bit sideways, maybe give us an intraday squeeze, and then fire through that 33.12, continuing that daily. So 1, 2, 3 days here, just be cautious. If it could take one day off and then start the journey again, that'd be constructive. Or maybe it just continues higher here. But 33.12 and this 33.67 are really my first targets on Amazon. ATR of 55 points. First target's out 87 points away. So got to be flexible here. And again, I would be patient to see if we can get a little, intraday squeeze, kind of like this, where if it just takes a day off or maybe just a night off and those Bollinger Bands can get nice and tight on the hourly and then start to fire that move. So just pay attention, guys. Runner, runner, runner. Let it go sideways a bit through that 33.12. Should have a good push towards that 33.67. And for Amazon, just a quick peek at my watch list because I forget off my top of my head. Keeping an eye on the 3300s and the 3350s. Those both have really good volume and offer some really good risk reward. So keep an eye on tech, keep an eye on NQ, and we'll see what this week offers. But that's my thoughts, guys. Again, overall here, stay focused, stay patient. This is focused trade. So really just don't lose sight of these beautiful setups that are slowly but surely forming while we're waiting for the overall to kind of make up its mind. So real quick here, let me get rid of these lines and we'll just take one final peek at the overall. Get rid of this, and boom. So again, team, patience, patience, patience. The market can truly squeeze longer than we can remain patient. But if we can just sit through here, kind of play our cards right and get ready, at some point it should break out and explode, or it's just going to go lower, or we're going to have to be patient for a very long time. But right now, guys, the market's setting up really, really nicely. It's just testing patience. If you have it, I think we're going to get rewarded. So hope my thoughts help focused. Enjoy the rest of the week. I'll catch up with you next and finish the week strong. Thanks for listening, guys, and thanks for watching. Talk to you soon.